Hello, and thank you, Yitzhak, for that. I wanted to talk to you just a little bit today about, thanks for having me here. I wanted to talk just a little bit about just a few things, just a bit of a Tamar wrap-up, because we talked about Tamar coming on for a very long time. Over the past few years, I've shown slides and kind of given statements about where we are on the progress of Tamar, and of course now Tamar is on and flowing, but some of the last parts of that are, I think, pretty interesting, and I wanted to wrap that up just a little bit, move from there into kind of what it's like to produce Tamar and some of the things that are specific to Israel about the way that you produce Tamar, and then get into the future, get into kind of what it looks like for Leviathan in the future and some of the regulatory challenges that are in front of us. Whoops. It's not working. I'm sorry, that's not working. There's a mouse here. Is this forward?
This forward. Ah.
So maybe we could just use the... I can just use the down arrow, I guess. And just a little bit.
Is it okay? Something.
I'll just do the down arrow.
Oh, okay.
Try that.
Let's try that.
It's way at the back.
Okay. Okay. That's pretty big. Okay.
Oh, I know what's going on now. Okay. So just Nobel Energy, if you're not familiar with Nobel Energy, we're an S&P 500 company with our corporate headquarters in Houston. We have a market cap of about $25 billion. We entered Israel in 1998, and we have about 2,000 employees. So out of that 2,000 employees, we have about 150 people here in Israel, and we make about 270,000 barrels of oil a day equivalent. We're about half oil and half gas, half domestic U.S. and half international. And of that 270, about 40 of that is Israel, effectively. So back to just what we call the Tamar Project, and most of you have seen these pictures before. It's about a 4-year project. It's a $3 billion project that involved drilling wells to 5,000 meters offshore Haifa, about 90 kilometers. It's in a depth of water of 1,700 meters. And because it's offshore Haifa and because we've tied into the shore at Ashdod, it's 150 kilometers of dual 16-inch pipelines and 150 kilometers of redundant umbilicals that actually control the field. So there's no platform sitting over the field at all. The platform is down to the south near Mary B. And everything that, all of the wells and the trees and the infrastructure that's offshore Haifa is subsea. So we had to build and transport the platform. Try the... There's the laser. So this is the new platform. This is the old Mary B structure. And this is the 30-inch pipeline that connects Mary B to the shore. And we've come in and teed into that 30-inch pipeline. And we brought it online right at the very end of March of this year. So we're finally at the very end of this. We've talked about this schedule for a very long time. And one of the things that we're really proud of is one of the things that we bring to the table that not just everyone can do is the ability to manage from a project standpoint this many simultaneous operations. You know, if you look back in the meat of this curve, right in the middle of it, we had a lot of things going on. We were drilling wells. We were modifying AOT, which is our Ashdod terminal, changes to Mary B to allow this thing to happen. had to build and fabricate, engineer the Tamar platform and put it in place all in a span of about 4 years here. So we had a lot of divers in the water at the very end as we were hooking the stuff up in 240 meters of water. A lot of logistical issues there. At our busiest day, I think we had 16 vessels in the water on one day. And so lots of simultaneous operations that take a huge amount of coordination. And we're really proud of the way that we were able to keep this on track and on budget. So it's very good to be at the end of this now and be looking back on this instead of projecting from the middle. So when I used to show this picture, this is the lay vessel that laid the twin 16-inch pipelines. This is the All-Seas Solitaire. And the significance of this picture was this is where we started laying the pipelines up to the north. And I've pointed to this and said that ship sitting there is where the Tamar platform would be, because that's the start of that pipeline. And I wanted to show that's kind of what the Mary B platform is going to look like when the Tamar platform comes and gets in place. And so I took this picture just the other day from the deck of the helideck of the Tamar platform. So that is what it looks like. That is where the Tamar platform is. It's there, and that is what Mary B looks like in the distance. It's really nice at night to look back and forth between the platforms and see the lights. So it's really quite an accomplishment. So there's the Tamar platform. Again, it's about 24 kilometers offshore Ashkelon, and about a kilometer, a little bit more than a kilometer away from the Mary B platform. And when you see everyone talks about the platform because that's what you see. And when we talk to our project team about the platform and all the pictures that go along with the platform and the attention given to that, it drives them crazy, because a platform is only a piece of what's gone on. It's only the part that you see. And we describe it to our team like this: it's like an iceberg. That the platform is the thing that you see, but there's a huge subsea infrastructure that had to be laid in addition to drilling all the wells and the hardware associated with the wells. And so just to put it in perspective, the Tamar platform weighs about 31,000 tons, but the entire project is 145,000 tons of steel. And that's all the pipelines and the umbilical and all the subsea kit, the manifold, all the hardware and the jumpers associated and the flow lines associated with the manifold. So just to give an idea of scope and scale of the project. So there's a lot more to it than what you see sticking up out of the water. So I took this picture just as we were about to install the jacket, and really an impressive thing to see that jacket go in the water. And I'm actually going to show a very short, just a few-minute video on kind of a time-lapse thing of us installing that platform. And it's really neat to see. It doesn't happen every day, so I thought I'd show it. Just so you know, whenever you put a platform like that in the water, that jacket in the water, it weighs 20,000 tons. And they sink the back of the launch barge, and the platform goes in the water when it wants to go. So whenever the gravity overcomes the frictional force of the steel on steel, it slides off of the launch barge and goes into the water. So it's kind of a nerve-wracking moment when that happens, to look at your project manager and say, this thing's going to float, right? When it goes in the water, it is going to float. And he's ever the comedian, he sort of shrugged when I asked him that, which wasn't what I wanted to hear. But I'll show a quick video here if I can start this. So I might. Should be sound with this, so hopefully it'll. so it looked easy, right? So installation of the platform, I wanted to show that. I promised to not keep doing that, but that was right at the very end, and we're very proud of that. So wanted to show what all the components look like. So it was a really big day for us. We had bets on what day we were going to hit first gas, and we've had targets up on the wall for a long time within Nobel Energy for first gas. It was very critical to get this done, and so it was a big moment to actually, whenever you start flowing gas through those facilities and you're standing there at the terminal, you can put your hand on the pipe and you can feel it, and it makes that noise when it starts going through. And even if you're an old gray-haired guy like me, it's a big deal when a big project like this comes online. So here we had a little mini celebration in the control room there at the terminal whenever it came on. And what they're reacting to is that meter showing the blip and showing the first sales of gas come through that meter. So a little bit about what it's like to produce Tamar. And the thing that makes it different here than most of the places that we're used to is the swings. And everyone in this room knows a lot more about this than I do, especially IEC. But there's two different kinds of swings that are important in the production that affect us. The first is seasonal swings, which is what this is, and the next is hourly swings. And they're both actually very important. So you just see the difference here. These, what these curves are, this is from IEC. These are the megawatts generated, the high and the low for a day, just graphed over time, over a period of a couple of years. And then here's our gas sales to IEC here. And so you can just see the difference between, if you look at the difference between kind of spring and summer, you see that for us to average a certain rate, for us to average a certain flow rate for a year means that we have to go very high and very low to average that. And then the next thing that affects that is that this shows you a lot about the hourly swings. This is our actual Tamar production measured at the Ashdod terminal. And if you look at that, it's just a lot of data points swinging up and down. But look at the difference between your flow at night and your flow during the day. So this is just a span here of several days. And you can see here that you're going, I'm going to look at the numbers a little closer. You know, you're going from somewhere around 6 BCMA up to 10 BCMA in a span of several hours. So you're flowing up and down every day. And that makes it different here. In most places, in the Gulf of Mexico, when you flow, you just turn on your well and you just flow into the grid. And the reason you're able to do that is there's so much infrastructure, so much production, and most importantly, gas storage, so that it has a big balloon to go into. So you never even think about the peaking that's going on shore. You just turn on your well and go. Here, we are tight-lined into the market. So we're actually having to open our wells and close our wells and open our wells and close our wells every day. And that actually creates operational challenges. Not only does it make us overbuild our capacity, but it creates operational challenges. If you can imagine that a couple of things going on. So you've got a choke. Just imagine any valve that you're doing this with all the time on a flowing gas stream. And then imagine that the reservoir is flowing into a wellbore and you're going up and down and you're creating a pressure transient every time you do that that's affecting that reservoir. And then if you think about the choke itself, the choke needle going into that tree itself, you're wearing on those things as you're doing that. So it's not optimal. You can change them out, but remember these things are subsea in 1,700 meters of water. So to change out one of these chokes, you have to do it with robots. You have to go down with remotely operated vehicles and change out the chokes in that fashion. So it's not easy. It's not like on Mary B when the trees were sitting on the platform. These are underwater and it's a lot harder to do. So operationally, it's very challenging. And this is one of several reasons that we need gas storage. And we've planned for a long time to try to do gas storage in the Mary B reservoir. And this is one of the reasons here. Okay, this is a very rough, so what does all this mean? Why does it matter about the swinging up and down as it relates to the gas supply or the gas demand here in Israel? Well, here's a depiction of that. That black line going up there is a very rough depiction of the demand curve. So it's not exactly that, of course, but it's about that. It's pretty close to that. It's in that ballpark. And so a lot of people know a lot more about that than I do, namely IEC and others. But But this is in the ballpark of what it is. And the point here on this is to point out that, the point here is that if this is what you're trying to supply, because if you remember the seasonal swings and the daily swings, if you want to supply this to the country, you have to build that. Does that make sense? So you have to build this much capacity for an hour in order to be able to provide that. So people get that confused all the time. They say, what does the gas supply need? And are you doing expansions? And how much do you need to be able to flow? It's confusing because people don't understand that peaking. And so we have to have, right now, our capacity is about 10 BCMA. Our capacity of the Tamar infrastructure is about 10 BCMA. So we're right about at where we need to be to supply what we have to supply. We are right on the edge. If you see right there in 2013, we're right about there. But if you look up at this and project out 2013, 2014, 2015, it's easier for me on this one over here. So 2014, you know, we're up there at about 11 BCMA, 2015 about 12 BCMA, and that's just the way it is. So that's what you have to have in terms of delivery capacity to be able to supply that market. And so the point is that we need Leviathan to come on. We need to look real hard at expanding Tamar. We need Leviathan to come on. All the effort should be on clearing the way for those kind of projects to happen, because that's the only thing that matters, is getting that on, getting those projects taken forward so that we can expand, because you can expand that delivery capacity in a lot of different ways. So Leviathan, first of all, storage and Tamar expansion. The reason that storage is important in this is because right now the bottleneck is at Ashdod Terminal. And so if you can put compression at Ashdod Terminal and suck on that 30-inch line, you can remove that bottleneck and get it up to about 12. So you go from about 10 to about 12 just by putting that compression at Ashdod. That's one expansion project. Another expansion project is storage. So if you do storage at Mary B, you take away the bottleneck between the field and the Tamar platform, because now you have another source of gas coming out of storage and into the lines. So you can increase it up to about 15, from about 12 to about 15 by doing that project. Okay? Regulatory approvals are not in place for those projects. So that's why I've got this on a slide called regulatory. That's the stuff that has to be resolved before we can do these things. And so the storage project, if we are to pull gas out of storage, we're already behind. You have to fill up storage before you can withdraw it from storage. We're already behind from that standpoint. And the other one, if you remember my operational concern, the really nice thing about doing storage is that we can flow at a consistent rate near the top of that delivery capacity. And then during the night, when the load goes down in Israel during the light, it can just flow right into that storage reservoir, so we can keep our wells flowing at a very consistent rate. So that's another reason that storage is important. And then there are other Tamar expansions. You can just keep removing bottlenecks and do more Tamar expansions, but you have to have contracts to do that, and you have to have regulatory approvals to do that. And at some point, you run into, you're still going through the same place. You're still coming to the south. You still are not coming through a redundant place in the north. And that's why a northern receiving point is so important. Everyone wants that. We want that. We wanted to do that for Tamar, and most people know that. So it's very important to get a northern landing point and get Leviathan online. So what are the issues that we have from a regulatory standpoint to sanction Leviathan as a project, just like we sanctioned Tamar as a project? Well, here's a handful of things that are there, and there are more things, but here are kind of 5 of the major things that we need. The first one is an export license. So we got some fantastic news the other day about export, that at least the policy was cleared. Underneath that policy, you still have to get licenses, and how you go about doing that is a little bit unclear. But a huge thing the other day of kind of clearing up the policy, at least, so that other explorers can come in here and they know that they at least have a chance, if they want to explore and find oil and gas, that they can sell the gas somewhere. Antitrust resolution is the other one. I mean, we still are basically treading water on Leviathan. I mean, we're not moving forward. We can't market gas. We can't put together the project. There's a cloud hanging over it that has to get resolved. The lease, we have to get a lease. We have the license for Leviathan. We have to get the lease. And so we'll be getting that you get that through the regulators. That still has to happen. We still need a government approval of the anchor gas contracts to do it. I mean, right now, we have to know that if we go out and do a deal with someone and do enough of a gas deal to put together a financeable package to sanction Leviathan, that contract will actually stand, that it will stay and it will stand. We have to know that. And then lastly, the Tamar. I mean, we have to know where we're going to land and what that facility will be like before we can even design our project. We have to know those things, or we literally can't even design the project. It's all very important. All of the subtleties associated with different setups and different landing points can have hundreds of millions of dollars of implication on how you actually design your project. And finally, just wrapping it all up, we have to have stability. I mean, we have to know that these things, whatever we decide, that they're actually stable regulations that stay in place that you can count on, so that we can feel secure in sanctioning another multi-billion-dollar project. And this is my last slide, and this is what I showed, just trying to depict the management of risks. People say this all the time. They say, well, you manage all kinds of risk. You don't know how much your project's going to cost. Your project could have delays. Your project, you could have geological risk. You could think that your reservoir is all connected when in fact it's fragmented. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong after you try to bring a project on, and you can read in the paper all over the world of train wrecks that can happen. And all those things are true, but managing those risks are what we do for a living. I mean, we know how to manage those things. They are there and they're present, but all of us have 30 years in the industry trying to manage those risks. The kind of things we can't move is if you move the platform on us. I mean, we all go into this thinking we're going to spend some money and we hope we're successful and then we can make revenue off of the money that we spent. It's that simple. But if you move around the basis if you move the foundation of all that with all the things that make up the fiscal environment and the regulatory environment, we can't control that. It terrifies us. It terrifies an international investor to not know if that foundation is going to move around on them. And so that's the way we look at it. It's not personal, it's clinical. It's just risk management. We're fine. We don't ask anyone for help in managing those other huge risks, but don't move the platform around on us. We can't stand it. So that's my big message on that one, and you hear me say that a lot. But that's it. So just wanted to kind of bring you up to that. Thanks for having me.